Hello and welcome to another Niagara video in my Niagara video series. My name is Charles Johnson, lead trainer and technical engineer at Lynxspring, and today we're going to be doing the demonstration on the series transform. The previous video I talked about what series transform is. Check out that presentation when you can. But just in short, series transform we use to manipulate Niagara histories into other meaningful and useful data sets. So let's go ahead and get started. In my JACE that I have here, in my config space, I have a folder that just says series transform. And again, like I'm creating a lot of this stuff here just to kind of keep everything all in one area. And so what I'm going to do here is I have a folder of all the history points that I need. So 4 of these with random numbers, and they all have a numeric interval connected to them in my history space. I've already installed the series transform module into my JACE, so if you've not done that, you should do so. Now, the first thing that we need to get this series transform started is a transform graph. And this transform graph is effectively a container to put my history sources, my other nodes, and a terminal in to give me the graph that I need. So I'm going to drag in a graph here, and we're going to first go over to a composite transform here. So I'm going to just name this composite transform. And we're going to be doing a few others as well. The composite transform is going to be, I'm going to use 2 of them here. Then I'll duplicate this in the mount rollout transform. And then I'm going to have another one and go over the time shift transform. Okay. So remember, the composite transform or the composite node allows me to bring in multiple data sets into one graph here. So I'm going to drag in a history source node, and I'm going to name this Kansas City underscore site A. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on it to bring up this dialog button or dialog window. And from source, I'm going to go ahead and hit the folder, which is going to give me my history chooser. And I'm going to select my Kansas City site A history. I'm going to keep the interval at automatic and my time range by default to question mark to question mark. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, I would like to be able to change some of these, some of the source schema here. So after you complete it the first time and you double click back in, you get this chevron here to edit your source schema. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the chevron, and I'm going to get rid of the trend flags and the status. So by doing it, I just select, or I just hit the minus button here and hit OK. And now I have all this. So all I want to see here is my timestamp and value. Now I'm going to do this for 4 others. I'm going to drag in another history source and name it Kansas City underscore site B. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to double click on it to bring this up. Look at my Kansas City site B history. Just to make sure. Yep, hit OK. Hit OK. And now bring this back up. Hit the chevron. Get rid of trend flags and status. Or trend flags and status. Hit OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here and get the other 2 set up for the St. Louis site, and I will be back in just a moment. Okay, I've got my other 2 sites set up now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a composite node, and I'm just going to name it composite. Now, to link from my history source nodes to my composite nodes, I'm going to go from my transform output to my transform inputs. So again, outputs to inputs, out to in, and out to in. Okay, and we'll just put it right there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and double click on my composite. And now we have this arrow button, which now brings in all my values here. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now the last thing that I need for this is a terminal node. And this here is going to allow us to create the schema as a whole. When you bring it in, it's going to be in fault automatically. And that's because nothing has been linked to it right now. So again, we take from the transform output to the transform inputs. And now we double click on the terminal, select schema and click OK. And then we double click again and it brings up the timestamp and the values. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and reorder this currently. I'm going to send this up and send this up. So now I have site A, site B, site A, site B. And it's to note that in N4, the reordering the schema doesn't currently reorder the columns of the resolved table. Um, it still works in AX. It's been an issue with N4 since its inception. It has not been fixed yet. I don't think it's going to get fixed anytime soon. So just take that into consideration. So now that I have all that done now, and I right click on my composite transform and I click resolve graph, it gives me the ord and then it gives me the graph parameters. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now it brings up the collection table of this here. So we can see we have some NaN things here, which I'm not really worried about. There were times where I started and stopped the history, so I expect to see some values that are not here at the time in which they were collected. But now I can go ahead and actually take this whole collection and I can put it in a PX file. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and go to my file space and I'm going to expand my PX folder just to make sure that I don't have anything named here. I'm going to go ahead and right click on the folder and go to news or new PX file. I'm going to name this composite transform. And then after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And now when I do this, I double clicked on the PX folder, the PX file. I'm going to go ahead and edit my PX file to change the scale to none. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the composite transform on here twice. So the first time I go in here, I'm going to go to Workbench View and the collection table itself. So now this brings up my timestamp values here. I'll give it roughly half. And of course, if I go into view mode, we can see the values here. And so now, if I go back into edit mode and I drag the composite transform back out here and select chart, now I get the option to change what I need here. So I'm going to change this brush here to red, this brush here to, let's see, this brush here to, we'll say, there we go, there's blue. This one here to, let's see, we'll do yellow. And then this one will go to, we'll do the magenta one here and hit OK. And now I'm going to just drag this right here. Now put this up, give this just a little more. And now I hit view mode. So we can see that we have some data here, some data missing. But again, that's because I started and stopped some history. So I'm not terribly worried about that. But you can see that what we can do here. So that is with the composite transform. Now let's talk about the aggregate node, which I'm actually going to do in the composite transform. I remember the composite or the aggregate can only take one piece of data here. So what we want to do is we actually want to put it in between the composite node and the terminal node. And I'm going to go ahead and delete the link between the two. And now I'm going to add the aggregate here and link from the outputs to the inputs. And again, always link from the outputs to the inputs. And now I'm going to double click on the aggregate node. And if I hit the arrow button, it brings up all the values here as the pass through. However, we get quotient, min, max, average, sum, subtract, and multiply. Let's get rid of the multiply, the subtract, and the quotient, and just give us the min, max, average, and sum. And now, if I resolve this graph, now we get the min, max, average, and sum of all of these. So now let's go ahead and go to the roll up, not the roll out. Let's go roll up transform. And let's see what the roll up transform does differently than this one. So in the roll up transform, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have my history nodes. So I'm going to take them from the composite and copy these. I'm going to paste them here. Now I take the roll up and I'm going to go ahead and add this roll up and name it KC underscore A. And of course, then I'm going to have KC underscore B, etc. Duplicate. And then we're going to name this SL or STLA and STLB. Oop. Control Z is our best friend. So duplicate this. And here we go, STLB. Okay, so for each of these, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we hit the arrow button. Oh, actually, the arrow button will not do anything just yet. What we need to do is we need to link the output into the input of this. Output into in, output into in. Okay, and now if I click on the node and do this, now it brings up the value. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and do a couple things. We're going to change the roll-up interval to hourly. And then we're going to go ahead and get rid of, let's see, the value we're going to get rid of. We're going to get rid of the sum. We're going to get rid of the subtract, multiply, and quotient as well. And go ahead and click OK here. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to double click our thing here, set it to hourly. hit the hour button, or I mean hit the arrow button. Then we get rid of the value, the sum, subtract, multiply, and the quotient. Click OK. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and get these other two set up and come right back. Okay, I'm back. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a composite node out here and hit composite. And I'm going to drag, as you guessed it, the outputs into the inputs. And I'm going to double click on the composite node to open up the configuration and hit the arrow button and bring in the min, max, and average of everything that I want. And now I'll go ahead and drag in the terminal node as the last one. Take that output, put it into the input, double click the terminal, schema, and click OK. Now let's go ahead and go KCA. We'll go ahead and change all these here. So I'm going to take a moment to go and reorder all of these here into the KCA in St. Louis. So I will pause the video one more time and update that. So I'm going to do max, min, and average on all of them. Okay, so I've now gone through and I've put everything into the order that I want. Min, max, average, min, max, average, min, max, average. Click OK. And now I right click on the rollup transform and hit resolve graph. Keep everything the same. So now I can take the hourly min, max, average of them all and show everyone that way. Now the last one I'm going to do is the time shift transform. So I'm going to double click on the wire sheet here to bring up this container wire sheet. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and drag a history source object onto the wire sheet. And I'm going to name this one Kansas City underscore site A yesterday. And now I'm going to open the configuration. And I'm going to go ahead and select Kansas City site A. And the interval is going to be automatic. However, I'm going to set the date range to yesterday right here and hit OK. Now, of course, I need to remove the status and the trend flags. So I'm going to do that as I did before. And now I'm going to bring in another history source here. And I'm going to name this Kansas City underscore site A underscore today. And here, again, I'm going to do Kansas City site A. And I'm going to look at today as the range. And again, get rid of the trend flags and status. Click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a time shift node onto the wire sheet. And I'm going to take the output of the yesterday and put it into the input of the timesheet. Or time shift, sorry. And when I double click on the time shift node, I'm going to type in 24 hours and click OK. And now when I go to the composite, I'm going to go from the time shift node, from the output to the inputs, and I'm going to drag the today into the transform inputs. Okay. And now if I double click my composite, I'm going to go ahead and use the arrow here to auto populate. And I'm going to use the time shift value versus the today value and click OK. And now, once again, we drag in the terminal node and take the outputs to the inputs. Double click here to go to schema. Double click again. I like that from yesterday versus today. We're going to keep that and click OK. And now if I resolve the graph, now we can see where it was yesterday versus suppose where it is today. So that's all I have for you right now. Hopefully you can play with these transform series or the series transform stuff and get a better understanding. But I hope this gives you a good a good start to your transformations. Have a great one.